Welcome to MSL Talk with Tom Caravela, a podcast specifically designed for MSLs and all things field medical. Hey guys, welcome back. My guest today is Sarah Snyder. She is Associate Director of Medical Affairs at BioSpice Therapeutics. And we talk about why it's important for MSLs to be lifelong learners. As always, Sarah is awesome. She's a repeat guest. I hope you guys really like this. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube and Instagram. And of course, hook up with me on LinkedIn. And don't forget to check us out on MSL Talk Live on Clubhouse, which is the first Tuesday of every month at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for joining me. Hey, Sarah, welcome back. How are you today?
I am doing great. How are you?
Awesome. I am awesome.
Okay.
And I'm glad to have you back. You're always so easy to talk to. You have such great ideas. And so I was just telling some folks on my team, I'm like, yeah, doing a podcast today. Sarah Snyder's coming back. I'm like, it's going to be great. It's going to be such a great conversation. So I'm looking to have forward to having you back.
I'm thrilled to be back. So I think the podcast that you're doing is not just for aspiring MSLs, but for existing MSLs and all medical affairs. It's just something we should be listening to. It's especially in the last year, like when we can't get together a lot of times, or we can't go to maybe the conferences with other MSLs and talk to each other. It shows everybody what some of the best practices. So thank you for doing it.
You know, it's kind of funny, but a lot of people think that this podcast is just for aspiring MSLs. And, you know, I love my aspiring MSLs. Quick shout out to anybody that's looking to break into an MSL role. I love you guys. Keep doing what you're doing. Stay motivated. Keep listening. But there are so many MSLs, MSL leaders, folks that are in the industry that reach out to me all the time. I talk to VPs of medical affairs like Tom. I have never missed one episode. They really like, and I'm not trying to I'm saying that only because the content that comes from folks like you and the guests that I bring on here is tremendous. It really is. And I go back and listen to certain episodes at different times because I'm like, geez, I have to listen to that again because that was so good. There was so much really good information. So, but why don't you do an introduction before we start talking through this whole thing?
Okay. My name is Sarah Snyder and I live in the Midwest, and I am a mom and a wife, and I've got 3 kids actually through international adoption and 3 dogs. I'm actually a fellow podcaster. I podcast about running. So I'm, big into athletics, sports, fitness, nutrition. And then obviously I've been in medical affairs for, I think almost 25 years. I started out in drug information as a resident at Eli Lilly, which is part of the reason I love, even though, like you said, your focus isn't on the aspiring MSLs. I just remember all the value I got from all my mentors during my fellowship. And that's something that just changed my life. So I'm always willing to help people and just answer questions. And I don't know it all, but I've made them on a lot of mistakes, right? So I like to do that. And currently, I work at BioSpice Therapeutics. I'm an associate director there in medical affairs, and I work on a drug for knee osteoarthritis. We're a small company, but I'm really happy there. They're based in San Diego, and I actually work for a friend of mine, and it's just a great place. So awesome. Happy to be on, and I look forward to the chat.
Yeah, and when I thought this topic just kind of came to my mind, and because I was thinking of how I know how important it is to be a subject matter expert and to be a lifelong learner and to constantly be on top of everything when you're an MSL. That's so important. And I'm not just saying this, I really thought of you when I had this idea because I know you're really on top of your game. You read a lot of books, you listen to podcasts, you're all over Clubhouse, and you're just totally dialed in and are constantly learning. So my first question is, tell me why that's important for MSLs.
Yeah, the first thing is the opposite of learning is boredom. So I think that if you find yourself bored, you've stopped learning. So, and, if you look at the data, actually, like boredom's associated with heart disease and anxiety and depression and all these things. And it's really easy to get in a pattern of that. So I think that's the first thing. I think as scientists, anybody that goes into medical affairs was probably a good student, right? So, maybe not exceptional, but, pretty good and considers themselves a lifelong learner, right? I think if you look at the data, there's surveys out there that 3 out of 4 Americans consider themselves a lifelong learner. So we think we are, but then I think that we have to do this gut check and think like, wait a second, are we really? And most of my colleagues and friends that have entered that MSL role, we all started with this entrepreneur spirit, right? We came in and we were excited, and then you slug away for a while, and you get the training plan brought to you, and you get the articles that you're supposed to read, and all of a sudden you're doing the things that you're told to do. But are you also seeking out the things that are going to make you even better and bring you up a notch? And I think it's easy to kind of get lost in that. And then also, I think, I say this too, like, I don't know how to do that, or they haven't taught me that yet. And when you find yourself saying that, if you've ever said that as an MSL, like, well, the company, my trainer hasn't taught me that, or the company hasn't sent us training on that, I think that you got to look back at yourself. And I have to do that to myself and be like, personal accountability, like my learning is my responsibility. It's not my director. It's not my my mentor. It's not anybody else at my company. It's me. Yes, they can give me my training plan and whatnot, but I think it's up to us to take over what we really need to be, the best. It's kind of cliche, but like that best version of yourself. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. And it's so easy now. I mean, it's never been a better time.
No,
because if you feel like there's something that you need to learn more about, or that you're not up to speed on, there's obviously the internet, there's podcasts, there's books on tape, or, audio books. There's so much available that we almost have no excuse.
Right.
Tell me about, so obviously you think MSL, you think of the importance of the scientific piece. Yeah. Is that what we're talking about? Or is there a lot of personal development learning that you're adding into this as well?
Yeah, well, obviously you have to have the scientific background. I think that 99.9% of the people that get into the role, they'll have that. So we all, it's just being able to apply that. I'll tell you a quick story. I remember one of my jobs previously, like before you went to talk to KOLs, even if you had been a previous MSL, you had to give this canned kind of talk, and you had to have all the p-values memorized, like to the exact, decimal point and whatnot, all these things. And I remember thinking, like, this is ridiculous. And when I think back to that, it was ridiculous, because you do have to be able to think on your feet. You've got to be able to know your data in and out, but you also have to be able to read your clients and figure out what people want to know. You have to be able to negotiate. You have to be able to talk to people at different levels and figure out how to write, good emails. There's all these different things that I think make an exceptional MSL that are so way beyond just the data. I mean, yes, being awesome at statistics, I think, can take you another level too. Like that could be your kind of niche on your team, and you could teach your colleagues about, statistics and whatnot. But I think all the things that are really going to move you up a notch are the things you can get on your own. Like you said, you can get all that stuff. Some of the problem is there's so much out there, it's hard to know kind of where to start. And then you've got that decision fatigue where it's like, well, geez, there's all these books. I go to Barnes and Noble, and you go to the nonfiction section, and you're like, well, I don't know which one to choose, so I'm not going to choose any of them. I think that comes into play too. So sometimes it's, a little bit of a wheel that people can get on.
Well, how do you manage that? So what's your advice to people that are looking for a place to start? What would you tell them?
Yeah, I think that you got to think about where you want to get to. So when I was thinking about some of these questions, I was thinking about when, I mentioned my kids are from across the world. So I remember thinking, I want to learn Russian. I'm going to learn Russian. Well, let me tell you, I never learned Russian. I got the tapes, but I never actually did it. Well, why didn't I? I didn't do it because I didn't tie it to anything in particular. Looking back, if I would have said something more like, I want to learn Russian because I want to be able to keep my kids, somewhat fluent or be able to communicate. If there was some kind of why behind it, I think that makes all the difference. I didn't have that. I was just kind of like the people that say on January 1st, I'm going to start going to the gym. Well, you're not going to keep going because you didn't have any why behind that. So I think if you could think, okay, maybe if you're an MSL and you want to be an MSL director, then you need to think about what you would do in that role. And then you need to backpedal and figure out the skills that would help you get there. And then what books, like you said, what podcasts, what training could you do that would help you get to that point? But if you don't ever think of the why, and the actual path, then you're just going to be Googling things and going from book to book and never really not latch onto anything in particular.
Yeah, I think that's great. I love that. So tie it to something.
Yes.
Because if you tie it to something and you have this intention and there's a goal in mind for whatever it is that you're looking to learn, that I have to apply this. I just committed myself because I tied it to this. And now my intention is to make it happen. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. And I also want to add, I think something that really, when I was thinking through this topic, I was thinking about the time of my life too. And I think that, especially for working women, and that's not the subject of this podcast, but I think that we have this idea that we can do all the things, right? And we're just going to go and be career women and be moms and do all these things. And I think that, just throwing this out there to people too, you can do all the things and meet your goals, but probably not at the same time. So even just putting it on a calendar and making some longer term goals. I wasn't on podcasts like this. Well, you didn't have a podcast maybe, but 5 years ago, because my kids were younger, and frankly, I had to place my goals and my plans at different stages. And then you can, so you might only have 10 minutes to read. Maybe you only can read 10 pages a day. But if you can just do little things at that time of your life, then later you can do kind of the bigger things.
Well, I was just about to ask you about specific things that you've learned, read, listened to that maybe you can share with others. And you just mentioned, take 10 minutes here, take an hour there. And you and I were both talking about the book Atomic Habits and how it's helped both of us and how much we're getting out of it. But that's a perfect example. I mean, that book is so helpful. And it just shows you that if you could break things off into chunks and just assign a certain amount of time each day towards a task to better yourself, 1% each day, or whatever your goals are, it over the course of time, you get that compound effect and you could really make big change. You can really make a big difference. So you kind of beat me to it because I was going to ask you about some of the stuff you've been listening to and you've been tuning into nowadays. But is there anything else? When you think of MSLs, have you learned anything recently, read anything recently, or listened to anything recently that it's oh my God, you have to check this out?
Yeah, I feel like these are not necessarily the things that, again, will help you scientifically, right? But I know you also just read the High Five Habit, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think that's another really good one. And she also has the 5-second rule. So those are also by Mel Robbins. And I think if you listen to her, whether you listen to actually her books, read her books, or listen to her interviews on any kind of podcast, one of the things that she does so well is gets the message out that you have to kind of start something before you feel confident in it. And, we're talking about learning, and I truly believe you should dive in and learn, and be a deep learner, but you also can't just wait. You can't just wait until you're the best presenter ever, or you're the best, podcaster ever, or you're, know everything in this article before I can go talk to a KOL. And she's really good about just starting before you're ready. Like the confidence is generated from doing the things that you're not ready to do yet. So sometimes you just have to step up and do it and just build that confidence along the way. So I highly recommend anything from Mel Robbins. The other one there's two others, I guess, that I like a lot that I'm listening to right now. One is Jay Shetty on Purpose, his podcast. I think his just ability to communicate and talk about whether it's building relationships with KOLs or someone in your life, whether it's dealing with difficult people, negotiating. He's got leadership episodes. He has a lot of solo episodes. He actually was a monk for years. So he's got some just kind of wild out, just background, but it's fascinating. His book is called Think Like a Monk. It's nothing religious, but it's just kind of about thinking about everything on a deeper level. So I really like that book. I think that one's worth it, or just his podcast on Purpose. And then let's see. I guess I'll also throw out, I like Marie Forleo a lot. The book is Everything is Figure Outable. And that one really resonated with me during COVID. When we were kind of like, geez, now I got to communicate with people in a different way. I've got to learn how to do, more of these digital things. And her book, the title kind of tells you what it's about. Everything is figure outable. And it talks about, figuring things out and just diving in and just figuring, doing the things.
One of the things, I have to go back to what you said. I think that one of the biggest problems that we all have is we overthink everything.
Yes.
And we put this fear in our minds of, oh, I'm not going to go for a run because I'm not ready. Yeah. Well, you don't have to go for the best run that you ever had. Just lace your shoes up and start walking or start jogging and see where it takes you. And maybe the first day it's not so good, but maybe the next day it's a little bit better. And then the next day it's a little bit better. And this kind of goes back to the atomic habits thing where you break things off into small pieces. But the point of the matter is, whatever it is that you're looking to do, whether it's a book, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a certification course, if you could just convince yourself to just start.
Yes.
That is one of the most important things, because that's going to take you to the second day and the third day and the fourth day. When I started this I can be, or I used to be, an overthinker. But when I started this podcast, I set some things up and I was like, all right, I'm just doing this. I'm just doing it. And if you listen to some of my earlier episodes, I kind of listened to them like I stunk. My speech was riddled with mistakes and ums and and over the course of time, I got better at it. And I think I'm a much different version of myself than I was. But if I never started it, I might never have it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be this huge thing. Like, it doesn't have to be running a marathon or starting a podcast. It can just be this tiny, like you said, lacing up your shoes. If people haven't read Atomic Habits, I think you and I would both agree, like, go get it. Cause he even talks about like the act of driving to the gym. Like, this guy literally drove to the gym for, I can't remember the amount of days, but for so many days that finally once he was like, well, if I'm going to drive there, I might as well do something there, but it's just an act of doing something and putting yourself in those shoes.
Well, and I love that example, because the guy that drove to the gym, he would drive to the gym and he would spend 5 minutes there every day. That was it. He'd drive to the gym. He'd do a couple of push-ups. When the 5-minute mark came, he'd get back in his car and he would leave.
Yes.
And the idea is like, well, that's stupid. Why would anybody do that? But the idea is to get himself programmed and familiar with and used to going to the gym.
That's right.
And then eventually he wound up, making it a very serious thing, and it worked out for him. So I just think that analysis paralysis that we all go through when we're overthinking things can really be, you can handle that and you could remedy that by just taking the first step to doing whatever it is that you want to do and see how it goes.
Completely agree. Yeah.
The other book, and we're talking about, not that this was the reason for this podcast, but there's one other book that I read recently and actually listened to it. It's called Peak Mind by Amisha Jha. And so it's Jha is her last name. And just like I did an episode on the high five habit because it had such a profound effect on me and I thought that it was something worth sharing. I might do a solo episode on this book because it's all about focus. We all could use this information to help us focus. And she breaks down techniques and tips on how to redirect your mind, how to be more intentional, and how to really focus and be more present. And it's really, really good stuff. And what I love about it is it's not highly scientific where it's just all research, but there's enough research in there that really gets you interested. So you should check that out too.
I will. Good recommendation. Yeah.
So what else can you tell MSLs, aspiring MSLs, MSL leaders that are listening to this? You've obviously done very well with incorporating this into your day, incorporating this into your professional life. But what else can you tell people on doing this as a practice to help your career and maybe even help your performance or your goals? Like, is there anything that you can kind of recommend?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is like not making your performance something you look at like in December. And then, in January, you write your plan. So that's like for the past, all my life, that's kind of how the MSL, like your performance goes, right? Kind of like in December, all of a sudden you rush to write your performance plan, your objectives and stuff. So I would say, if you use an electronic planner, that's fine, but I would take a paper planner separate or, whatever, some kind of Google Doc or something and track your progress throughout the year. One of the things, I'm not sure if you follow Brendan Burchard or not, but I listened to a lot of his stuff. And the thing he taught me was that you have to rate yourself. Like the other part of being an MSL is that like no one's, your manager might come, occasionally, but no one's with you. And a lot of times we get this feedback that you're doing great, like everything is good and blah, 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 and in reality, like there's a lot of things you could up level, right? But we're not doing that on a daily or weekly or a monthly basis. And so I recommend his planner. It's a paper planner. It's called the Brendan Burchard High Performance Planner. I think it's just on Amazon. It's not very expensive, but each day actually he has you rate yourself. And then at the end of the week, you rate yourself again. And then you actually like make tangible things that, you're not going to rate yourself 10 out of 10, so then you're actually looking at the things that you need to improve upon and figure out, you can make a plan of how to do that, right? But if you never rate yourself, in relationships or in work or whatnot, you're never going to get anywhere. So, that's kind of the number one. And then the other thing that I think, I didn't touch on is just your learning style. So, again, in school, like we're brought all the learning and maybe as MSLs too, but we're never, and most of us know like the 4 learning styles, right? You're either auditory, visual, reading and writing, or kinesthetic. So that, but then you don't really do anything with it. So I think just taking like a step back and thinking like, which predominant kind of learner am I? And then am I like actually applying that and doing my stuff the right way? Like I like to read, write. I like to write on stuff, which since I like podcasts and Audible doesn't necessarily make sense, but I'm more like you. Like I like to have something I'm doing while I'm driving or working out. So I don't know, just kind of like thinking about that and then making sure you're matching it up. And then the other question to ask yourself is like, where do I learn the best? And so is it, we're at home usually as well, kind of with COVID, obviously, but like as MSLs, like if you don't learn the best at home, like go to the coffee shop, go to the library, like you got to set yourself up like that. Like I used to not, when my kids were younger, I was always at the coffee shop because I couldn't focus at home, and then I guess the final thing I'll add to that is just like, if you learn best in a group or individually. And if you learn best in a group, you should be going to a group exercise class or signing up like for group presentation skills. That most pharma companies have something like that. But if you learn more individually, then maybe books and podcasts are more for you. Those are the kind of things that I think about when I think about learning and like how I do it. And certainly like, it has to become a habit. Like it's not something that I'm just like, oh, I'd rather read this book than Netflix, right? But you just get, you make yourself do it, and then it just becomes a part of who you are.
Totally. And I think that goes back to some of the stuff we were talking about before. I mean, this is something that you really have to work at it. You have to schedule it. You have to make time for it because there's so many other distractions. And I'd love to just binge on Netflix all the time.
Mhm.
And I'm a
Yeah.
big Netflix guy. I mean, I talk about it every once in a while on here.
Yeah.
I do, but sometimes I'm like, all right, dude, you're like a loser. Stop now and do something. I need to be productive. I need to, like, even when I'm at the gym and I'm working out, I'm listening to a podcast. I'm trying to learn something. If I'm in the car and I'm driving, I'm trying to learn something. I'm trying to help myself in some way. But there are times when I just want to unwind and not have to think, and I'll put Netflix on. But you got to find that balance. I think it's like anything else.
I agree. And I think then, the neat part of it is medical affairs or MSLs. Like, you'd be surprised at like what kind of conversations you can have with your KOLs that aren't necessarily related to like your drug, and obviously the company wants you to, talk the scientific, and that's all great. But, sometimes they do want to talk about technology or maybe the last book that they read, and those kind of little things. And that's why I like social listening so much, because you can kind of pick up those things and figure out maybe who would be more apt to have those kind of conversations, right? And not to be like a stalker, but you know what I'm saying? And then you can build relationships faster too. I think it's helpful.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. So let's talk about Clubhouse, because I know that you're a Clubhouse user, and you've come on to our MSL Talk live on Clubhouse discussion, and we love having you on because you're obviously so natural. But if you could tell everybody what is Clubhouse and how you use it, I think that might be helpful, because I think a lot of people don't know what Clubhouse is.
Yeah. So Clubhouse is it's a social media app. It's an actual app. It used to be just for iPhone users, Apple, but it's not for everybody. And it's live audio only sessions about all sorts of topics. So I'll give you an example. Actually, when I wanted to start the podcast, I just searched in podcasts on Clubhouse, and like there was like groups where you could just hop on and you could listen to people talk about how they started a podcast or how, and some of them, honestly, it can be a time suck and you're kind of like, but you can actually just quietly leave the room if it's not something that you can learn from or contribute, but it's literally pretty much, any topic that you can imagine, whether it's health and fitness. I think it's a wonderful place for MSLs to stay up on digital medicine. Like we don't learn about that. There's actually like every Sunday, there's a biotech Clubhouse chat where they just talk about the up and coming biotechs. They talk about a lot of clinical trials, just the future of clinical trials. Like clinical trials aren't going to be the same in 5 years, but if we just sit there and wait, and not listen, then we aren't going to know and be up, maybe this doesn't, and none of this applies to my job. Like, not like directly, but it's just like, if you're interested in medicine and healthcare, that the amount of wisdom on there is phenomenal. And then they also just have good chats about things like running, parenting, different things. So what you'll probably find on there is if you follow certain people, then you'll find, clubs that you can join. And you're kind of, like I said, I like to do the Sunday one. I like to do yours, which is on Tuesdays. There's another medical affairs one on Fridays that I've gotten a lot of wisdom from. So you kind of find these ones that you go back to, but it's also just good. Like you said, you like to have something at the gym or in the car, or my gosh, while you're cleaning your house, there's no better time to do stuff like that. Just walking the dog, you can actually hop on a Clubhouse and see, like, maybe you can connect with somebody that isn't like a KOL, but just a potential, who knows what the future is going to hold. So
I kind of like it. I think it's an interesting platform.
Yeah.
It's this discussion platform that you just get to have a conversation digitally. Yeah. The only thing I don't like about it is it's not video, which everybody's so used to video nowadays. But actually that's kind of cool too, because you can just kind of be a little bit anonymous. And it's not recorded. So a lot of people that listen to MSL Talk live, when they miss it, they're like, how do I get a recording? I'm like, sorry, you got to kind of tune in. So we're going to keep doing it. It's just a quick plug. It's the first Tuesday of every month at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time, if you want to check it out. I am thinking about maybe changing it a little bit and doing it on LinkedIn. So it'll be LinkedIn live, which would be video, and it's recorded. Yeah. So that might be the next iteration of the MSL Talk live discussion, but it's check it out. It's awesome. Sarah's on all the time. Julie Chen's my co-host. She's amazing. So we're going to keep doing it. And it's definitely a way to learn really good information. What about, last question, what about TikTok? Do you go on TikTok at all?
No.
No. Oh my God.
No, I don't do TikTok at all. My kids do. So I actually don't even have the app on my phone. But I'm
obsessed with TikTok. Well, here's the thing. The thing you have to know about TikTok is you have to self-direct it.
Yes.
Because if you don't, you're going to wind up just getting a bunch of people dancing around on your screen that you're not going to have any interest in.
Yeah.
And what I mean by self-directing it is you search on what you're interested in.
Yeah.
You search on what you're interested in. You look, maybe like or follow the content that you're interested in, and then it's going to set the algorithm to show you that. So when you go to your home screen and you're just looking at videos that are coming to you, it's going to follow the algorithm that you set. And if you don't like, on any given day, sometimes I'm like, wait a minute, what is going on? Why am I getting these crazy videos? Sometimes the algorithm gets out of whack. You just go through the search. Like I might go to the search and type in, the topic might be interview tips. I want to see what people are saying about interview tips, because that's some of the stuff that I do. And then all of a sudden, the next couple of days, all you're getting is people that are talking about interview tips. So just a little bit of advice, but I could tell you this, and this is my prediction. Tom Caravela said it's December 1st of 2021. TikTok is going to surpass all other social media platforms in the next 5 years. You watch.
Yeah, I believe it. I don't know if you ever listened to Gary Vee, but he's been saying that for a couple of years, and I'm like, I just haven't gotten on it, but
there's no doubt. And the reason why is because we are a society of instant gratification.
Yes, that's true.
We want visual now.
Yeah.
We want it short, to the point. We want to just boom, we want to have it out there. And that's what TikTok is, and that's what it does. So that's my prediction. But any final words? I know we're getting a little, getting to the end of it here. So any other words of advice? Because you're awesome, and I know that you probably have one other thing up your sleeve.
No, the only thing I can think of is just based on what you just said, and that was like how you're using TikTok, but you're not just on TikTok. So like you're using it strategically. And I think that's where people are getting caught up. Like I did a little Twitter poll really quick a couple weeks ago, and I was like, do you use Twitter? And they're like, no, like half the people don't use Twitter as MSLs. And I'm like, no, I don't mean you're just using Twitter to like post what you had for breakfast or like follow, it's very strategic and search oriented, just like you would like PubMed or like having a literature search, about your drug or about the disease state. And, things like Twitter lists. Like if you go to a conference, you should have a Twitter list with all the people that you want to follow for that conference. It's super easy. It takes you 5 minutes to create it. And then you can just go to that list and see for that conference, the stuff that you want to see. But if you do just endlessly scroll TikTok, then it's wasting time, and it's probably, just not a good value. But I think if you can use all these tools and figure out a strategy, and sometimes it does take a little while to figure out the strategy, but it's worth it in the end to put up the little time. And same with LinkedIn, you put the time in it up front and it will pay off. So I think that's kind of,
Great piece of last advice. I love it. So Sarah, thanks so much for being a great partner and for constantly helping us out and coming on here. You're awesome. And we're going to do this again. I'm sure we will. You'll be hearing from me. I'll be like, Sarah, how about this?
Thanks for all that you do. So, and if you guys didn't listen to that gratitude episode he put out a few weeks ago around Thanksgiving, just make sure to do that one, because I think that one is one of the things that we just forget to do professionally. And it really resonated well with me. So thanks.
Awesome. All right. I appreciate that.
Okay.
All right. Talk soon.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the show. If you've enjoyed it, please subscribe so that you don't miss episodes in the future, and feel free to leave a rating or a review or a comment. Thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.